Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Noble Company podcast. My name is Roanne Smith, and I'm your host for this evening. And just a little bit of a background on what we do. This is a podcast dedicated to discussing contemporary topics in business, and we feature experts, academics, and entrepreneurs from across the world, and we talk to them about very interesting topics in business from across the world. Now, today we are going to be looking at the career pivot. Our topic is the career pivot, opportunities and challenges. And I'm actually very excited to have the guests that we are entertaining this evening. They come from a variety of backgrounds. They have a range of experiences, and they're really excited to share that with you. So with no further ado, if they'll just enter the studio.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good night.
Good night. I'm still not seeing you on screen.
We can see you.
I'm seeing Denise. Hi, Denise. Okay, I'm not sure why I'm going to pretend that you're there. And okay, I see you. Great. Okay, fantastic.
Come on, technology.
I know, right?
You know, this thing, StreamYard, doesn't want me to be great. Come on.
I know, right?
Okay.
It's part of the process.
So, pardon, Diego?
No, it's just part of the process. Roll with it.
Yeah, just rolling with the punches. Okay, so again, I'm really excited to have my panel here tonight, and I'm just going to go ahead and just introduce them briefly. I'm going to tell you what their names are, but they're going to go ahead and actually tell you a little bit more about themselves. So there's Denise Bourne. Wave, Denise. And then there's Makeda.
Hey, guys.
There's Diego.
Hello.
Omar. And Joanne. So I'm going to start with you, Makeda. If you would just tell me a little bit about yourself, tell me about where your journey started and where you are now.
Sure. And thank you so much for inviting me. Excited to be here with everyone tuning in live or if they're catching this on the replay. So in terms of where my career started, so my career path started with a decision that I made in 1999. I was 16 years old and I was sat on the hot porcelain tiles of my living room in Mangrove Park, St. Philip, Barbados. And I was doing what we did every Sunday evening. And that is, of course, watch Oprah, of course, you know. And the topic of the show was career change. And she was interviewing about 5 men and women from the States who were in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and one gentleman was in his 60s. And they were all talking about how they found themselves at a stage where they were unhappy, unfulfilled, uninspired in their work. And they made this change because they didn't like what they were doing in their career. And I will never forget, I say that was the start of my career path because then and there I made a decision. I'm not going to wait until I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to figure out what I love doing. I'm going to figure out what I love doing now. And the thing that I loved doing more than anything else was organizing, was events. I was at my secondary school graduation committee. I love taking big ideas and bringing it into reality. So that led me to doing my bachelor's degree in business management. And then I went to England and I did my master's in events and facilities management. And from there, I had a 15-year career designing and delivering training programs, training events, professional development, and L&D events for global world-leading companies such as Deutsche Bank, Ericsson, PwC, Alda Novari, Slaughter and May. And so I did that for 15 years until 2018 when things took a drastic turn. And I think we're all going to talk about our turn, so I'll leave that for later. So today I am a transformational speaker, trainer, and coach. And the work that I do is I empower and show professionals from across the globe how they can release fear, skyrocket their confidence in themselves. And really, it's about stepping into their God given purpose, passion, and potential. So that's the work that I do now.
Cool.
I think you're muted, Rowan.
Am I unmuted now? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michaela,
You're most
for
welcome, Rowan.
that introduction. And as if you couldn't tell, like she's really passionate about what she does, and even in her delivery, that's some transformation speaking right there. So yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit more. Next, I'll go to Diego. Diego, if you can tell me a little bit more about you.
Sure, I'll give an abridged version so we get some time to chat more a bit later. But I guess started out in high school, interested a lot, very interested in video games, graphic design, but we only have one university here, so that wasn't really an option in the curriculum. So and I love technology in general. So the closest thing to tech was basically a degree in electrical engineering. I couldn't go abroad at that time, so just for the sake of getting a degree, did electrical engineering at a local university, majoring in information technology and telecommunications. Took a bit longer than expected. Really wasn't really enjoying it. So it took about 3 to 4, I think 5 years now to finish it. And during the time I was, finishing up my thesis, decided to start a company with my brother, a media printing company. So we started with that. Um, the reason for that being, one, he was switching, his career as well, and we were just diving into it. Already had interest in design, so we are combining that. But a key moment that kind of pushed me that direction is during my thesis period, where you had to intern for a company or write something. So I did all the formal applications through the university. Had a big corporate company here. One of the lecturers who was working there had a recommendation, and yeah, I didn't get through. So that was the moment I realized, like, okay, corporates like this. And I kind of like a black or white switch, like, okay, if that's how it's going to be, I'm going to do my own thing. And the other thing that happened simultaneously, one of my seniors was already working at another tech company, and they were looking for new graduates to recruit. And I already had in mind to start a company with my brother, but I said, okay, let's just go for the interview process, how it's going. And I already was convinced I'm not gonna go here, but just to get through that experience. And that was the moment I realized you have power in negotiation, because they wanted me.
Absolutely.
And even though I was, coming with, exceeding demands, like, okay, these are the conditions, etc. And I guess that's what impressed them, and that showed me, like, okay, if you have a strong view, that independence, that kind of showed me, like, you can control which direction you're going. So I didn't opt in to go the traditional corporate route, and I actually never went in. And I won't say there's been many pivots, but it's been just a continuous learning journey of trying different things and hitting a wall, starting up again, and expanding your horizons. So that's kind of how that went. Right now, I met Roanne like 5 years after graduating from the university here, got a scholarship to New Zealand. That's where I met Roanne to get a course in business management. And yeah, did that in the midst of the pandemic in 2020. Started a podcast in my dorm room back then with some friends, because that's when I was really, really, really interested in the financial developments, economics, and how the world worked, and just entrepreneurship, personal development in general. And that's kind of how it started. Got back to Suriname, started like a more structured show with another friend of mine, and that's how we ended up in kind of more the content creation role. So we can talk more about the future of content creation, etc. How we see that the struggles there is with content creations right now, and especially people in the creative space. And that's kind of what we're trying to bridge. Muted.
The tech gremlins are on you tonight.
You see, this is when you're trying to be polite. So like I'm muting my mic so there's no noise in the background, and then yeah, okay. So thank you, Diego. I am going to turn over to Denise. If you can just tell us about your story briefly.
Brief version goes like this: biology, foreign languages, biology, first degree, master's in management, lost my job. Which job? Fell into a job in wine. Ta-da! Like literally, that's sort of kind of the really short version, but
Was the story.
essentially, I exist as a human being who just moves with her energy and spirit wherever it takes her. So I legitimately do what I want to do when I want to do it without having to justify and explain to people why, because it does not make sense to me. However, um, suffice to say, hi, Arlene. I can't add a comment. I haven't figured out this technology yet, but she said hi. I used to work at the Central Bank at one point, did that in human resources. I was a conference producer at some point. I was a customer service agent at a dealership at some point, became a sales rep, moved on. Let's be nice tonight. Moved on and started my own business importing and distributing wine, and then left Barbados for a number of reasons we can discuss later. And I'm back in New York City where I was actually born. And I'm still in the wine space. Since the wine space is a very big space, I'm now in my third career in wine. And we'll talk about it more. So that's really brief.
Sounds really interesting. Thanks for sharing, Denise. Next, I'm going to go to you, Joy-Ann.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Rowan. Well, I worked in various industries, manufacturing, the accounts department, the hotel industry, but I spent most of my time in banking. Currently, I'm a trained educator and a certified trainer. I'm a content creator and a curator of an Instagram page called Joy's World of English. And it's a spin-off of that after I realized that people really enjoyed the page and was enjoying anything English. I started a small business in the educational sector called Joy's World of English. That's basically it.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Omar?
Hi, I'm Omar Kennedy. I am a grown man who encourages other adults to dress like comic characters and cartoon characters.
You sure do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I'm very good at it. Yes, I am an artist and creative at heart. I went to Harrison College with half of these fine people here, and I was told at Harrison College that as an artist, you don't make any money from art. Become a doctor, a lawyer, or a bank manager. And so I did. I went off to New York. I lived there for 5 years, came back from my MBA, nice and flashy, and got a nice spanking job in the finance industry. I was unhappy for about 15 years. And yeah, I'm at heart a creative. And I decided I created AnimeCon. And AnimeCon is, to toot my horn a little bit, I guess this is on the website, so I guess I can say it, the largest pop culture convention in the Eastern Caribbean. Oh, thank you. Right, and so we're having our 11th year this year, and we've grown from strength to strength. We moved from having one room at the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford Center having about 300 or 400 people come through our doors to an event which has just sub 7,000 people in a weekend. So, we've grown slightly. And yes, so but the thing about Anime Con is it's not just about a place where people come and dress up and play video games or do cosplay or display art. It is an avenue for creatives to expand their lineup, to network. People call Anime Con the creatives Christmas because that's where they get a lot of their sales in pop culture. So we do our best to create an open marketplace and to bring persons from the industry, whether it be from New York or from Hollywood, from Europe, from Asia, from different varying aspects of pop culture to Barbados, either digitally or in person, to help mentor the creatives in Barbados, to encourage them. Yes, I am small, but I can make it, because a lot of these guys were small and they made it as well. And one of the fantastic things which I learned through AnimeCon is that although we are a small country with a small pop culture base, we have amazing talent here, and we have persons, lots of people producing at an international standard, and that was wonderful. So pop culture is my main thing. AnimeCon has expanded and diversified. We co-own a restaurant which is pop culture themed, the first one of its type in the region. Um, During COVID, we pivoted again and we created our own video game development studio. So yeah, so I that's our latest thing that we're doing, and we've gotten some good attention from international clients and persons who do want to do work with us. So we're very happy about that. And besides that, I'm also a science fantasy author. So I do a bit of writing. I'm building out my own shared universe, which I've been doing in my spare time, and well, not so spare time because I've been putting a lot of work into it. I treat it as a 9 to 5 as well. So I'm a very busy guy. I love pop culture. I love creatives. Finance was not for me. And one of the things I noticed about finance was that when I created AnimeCon, a lot of persons in finance started to look down their nose at me. Although I was an industry expert, and everyone looked up to me. I used to tackle like governors of central banks and prime ministers and that sort of thing with difficult questions. And I created Anime Con. People started looking down their nose on me, and it's like, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to leave, finance to deal with this expletive? I know they were quite rude. And then, a few years on, they come asking for for tickets for their kids. So I said to them, oh, you know what, expletive, and it was good times. So yeah, that's Omar Kennedy. Where will
Yes,
Omar
you.
Kennedy go next? I will see.
Thank you
Cheers.
so much, Omar. And you brought up some really interesting points that I want to kind of um, spin off of. For example, the the fact that you went to Harrison College, like some of us here, and um, the, there's so many expectations of us as Harrisonians. I remember when I decided that I was going to do hotel management as my first degree, people were like, and I remember like another friend of mine who did hospitality. A girl asked her, so you're still doing cooking school? As if
Okay.
one, something is wrong with cooking school, and two, as if like hospitality is just cooking,
Hmm.
and I have to admit that I was guilty of it at a much younger age, because when I went into first form, I remember there was this young lady. I was asking her, so what do you want to be when you grow up? She told me a cosmetologist, and I was literally confused. I was like, I don't understand. Because I was at Harrison College, and so there's this. I think I always say that there's this very elitist culture in Barbados, where we feel like there are certain jobs that carry certain weight, and if you're not in certain positions, and there are some schools. I love my school. Um, but there are some schools in Barbados that perpetuate that, and there's some sections of society that perpetuate that as well. Um, So, and I'm going to go to Joyanne now because, oh, Denise, you have something to say?
Well, you touched on it briefly, and I was going to say it's a little deeper. If we dive deeper, we are deeper than the school and the perceptions aligned with the school. It's really a societal conversation, right? It
Agreed.
is an indoctrination of society, which I lived most of my life in the Barbadian society, so I believe I can speak to it with some degree of experience and expertise, and certainly have two very Barbadian parents. The conversations are you must, in order to succeed, you must study and get good grades and find you a good job, aka banking, legal, uh,
Doctor.
lawyer, doctor,
Mm-hmm.
work or some office work, some government job, perhaps potentially a teacher. Do that for 33 and a half years and then retire and enjoy life at 67.
Yeah.
So once we start with the indoctrination, everything else adds because the school thing is only a layered part of the societal.
I completely agree. And that's why I said we have an elitist society. We have an elitist society here in Barbados. But I am going to go to Joyanne because she also shared with me that she would have had a similar experience when she went into teaching. Would you like to share that a little bit with us, Joyanne?
Sure. Well, when I left banking, I remember my manager telling me, "You will never drive a BMW. You will never own a BMW," because I was leaving banking to go into teaching. So that was my experience. I remember everybody telling me, how the children were going to be. And it's funny enough, a teacher actually told me when I got there, because I went in my bank uniform, and she was like, "Don't come here. Don't leave your job to come here." But I really wanted to teach. And then it's funny that you talked about people saying, just going to teaching and over 33 and 30 years and stuff like that. I had a really difficult time, even though people were telling me these things. I think internally I had some kind of reservation as well, because I come from a profession where there's deference, and I'm going to a profession where people don't value or respect, teachers, and I think I battled with marrying being teachers being professionals, because of my view of what a professional is. It took me a while. The environment is different, you have to buy your own materials. Yeah, I was like, you have to buy your own pen. That's something that was foreign to me. So even though that society had that view going into teaching, it took me a while I can get out of that, the feeling of teaching or teachers not being professionals, and that there are different kinds of professionals.
To be fair, none of us on this panel, maybe except for Roanne, are real professionals. Just putting that out there, according to society.
Well, that's really interesting because I would love to know what your idea of a professional is. But yes, cheers to that. I'm drinking my water. I don't know what you're having there, Omar.
It's not PG rated.
Okay. We see Denise is having some wine. Okay, great.
I am consistent, if nothing else. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Makeda?
I think the main thing that just came up is we were talking so much about Harrison College, and then Denise switched it to Barbados as a whole and the indoctrination. But trust and believe, this isn't just a Bajan thing. This isn't just a Barbadian thing. Having spent 17 years living in England, the number of people that I speak to from across Europe, Africans, West Africans, that can resonate, the exact same thing. Doctor, lawyer, engineer. Doctor, lawyer,
It's
engineer.
true.
What were the other conversations? So I know us Bajans like to think that we're special, and we are. But trust and believe that it's a different generation way of thinking. And I think the more we have conversations like this and bring to the fore the options that are truly available to you, and the idea that doing a career and having a career that you actually love isn't something that's far-fetched and kept to the movies, but it's something that is available for every single person who has the courage and confidence to pursue it, the more we'll most likely and hopefully see generations of people who, like me and like Omar, don't spend 15 years doing something that they do not love.
Agreed.
Well,
I'm excited
thanks
to
so
chime in there. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thanks so much for bringing that up, because I am the first person to always say, stop attributing things to Bajans that are, worldwide, or stop attributing things to Black people, So thanks for correcting me. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And thank you as well, because I hope I did not imply that it was only a Barbadian experience.
Oh no, no.
I know for sure that it isn't. Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, I like to speak from a point of knowledge, and that's the culture I know for sure, for sure. Although I do live in the US and I know that culture for sure, for sure. And well, that's another conversation for another day. But yeah.
No, I can
Omar?
definitely attest to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, no, to what Makeda says, that it's not just because we're having the same kind of direction in our podcast on the traditional doctor, lawyer, banking, accounting, economics direction, and I think, yeah, it's a global thing, kind of more like Western society. And if you look back on how it all started, industrial revolution, 40-hour work week, it was just to optimize, production at a certain time in the world and the economic developments. But like, no pun intended, Barbados being an island, Suriname not really an island, but we are, or at least the people, the average individual is kind of living on an island, or in a bubble, because they're not exposed to outside. So I think that's where the perception comes from. Okay, our parents, our society is like that, but the moment you step outside, so this is one thing when people ask me if you have an advice, career advice, the first thing that comes to mind is, step outside of your borders. Just go on a vacation to, another island if it's nearby, or go to Europe, different cultures. You're gonna see so many similarities yet differences that you can reflect back. And the moment you get back to your own country, you're gonna appreciate certain things more, or not take them for granted. Um, so yeah, it's more like the larger media as a whole is shaping this up. And I think as the Caribbean, we're very much influenced on Western media, like the US, heavily US focused media. So that is kind of writing the narrative on how life, successful life, is supposed to look like, which isn't necessarily always the case.
The
Agreed.
unfortunate thing is, if we think back to school as well, when people ask, well, first of all, by profession, I just drink. That's all I can tell you. I get paid to drink and socialize, which is not a real job, and I'm cool with it because I still get
I'd say
paid.
it's a real job.
I'm sure I get paid, so I'm good. But
No,
the
I
thing
want that job.
is, right? Right.
I own a bar, so I want you there.
You need a new liver, but let's talk about that on my next visit. The thing is that when you think about it, and I thought about it in preparation for today, when I was a 5-year-old, 6, I told someone I wanted to be a pediatrician. And the thing is, when I went to school, I went to a rural primary school, I went to Thesa Michael School. There were probably a couple career fairs. I promise you, I've never seen a wine professional at a career fair. You see the same people all the time. And I'm definitely not limited to Barbados. I'm quite sure that there are very few, maybe within recent times, but certainly not in the 90s. If you went to a school career fair with ambitions of what could I be, I don't know how many of you, maybe with the exception perhaps of Joyanne, would have seen someone representing the space that you're in right now and saying, hey, this is a lucrative career, right? So changing the narrative starts with seeing representation of different opportunities for careers. I mean, social media is doing a good and slightly bad job of that presently, but it's the awareness that gets things to change, which is why so many people pivot, because once people become aware of all the possibilities, then they're like, oh, well, I don't have to do this for 10, 15 years. I can actually do this and get paid. And this will make me happy. Right? I
I
think
think
that's
it,
I agree with you completely. I went back to my old workplace to pay a bill last week, and I ran into an executive vice president there. And I was there in my t-shirt, had on my jeans, had on my slippers. And he looks at me with his snide self and goes, I see you living a good life, man. I want to live like you. And he's all dressed in his designer slacks and shoes and whatnot. I knew he was being a jerk, and I often tell persons what makes people stay, especially in jobs, because his job's is very, very high stress. I think he had a stroke and all that already. And I was saying to myself, a lot of the reasons why people stay in these jobs is fear. And we are taught as kids growing up, we see our parents doing it. You have to work hard. You have to get that mortgage. You have to get that BMW. And I will tell you, I did have a BMW. It was the worst mistake of my life. That thing is so expensive, right? The best thing ever happened to that car is when somebody hit it and wrote it off, right? So I'm telling you, right? That was the worst financial decision I have ever made in my entire life, and I've done some silly things. So, anyways, we have to overcome that fear, and we're taught to conform in Barbados. You have to go to UE or else you're nothing. You have to go to BCC or a particular secondary school. You have to go and do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. We're not taught to be entrepreneurs. We're not taught to make our own money. We are taught to go get yourself in debt to make sure that you remain in debt. And if your partner dies or becomes unemployed, you have to, if your boss tells you to work 80 hours a week, you have to work 80 hours a week. And if I'm going to work 80 hours a week, I'm doing it for my own company, not somebody else's. That if I fall down and die, that they say, oh, well, Omar was a good boy and replace him next week. If I die from doing what I love, that is my legacy that I have built. And that is what I want for my people, not just Barbadians, but people everywhere. What would you do if you were not afraid? And that's the most important thing that we need to ask ourselves and stop worrying. I'm not saying that drop everything you're doing and make that pivot. You have to plan. You have to plan because you need to eat and you need to drink, you know?
yes, you do, so that I can remain employed and be successful in my career.
Absolutely.
But you just brought up something that I wanted to touch on. I made a note, and I think this is timely. The word fear, but more than fear of failure. And I would tell you that one of the most crippling experiences I have ever had in the 39 and change years of my life was when my business in Barbados failed or ended or had to be ended. And I literally went through the darkest moments of my existence because my business failed, and based on what I've been brought up to think and how society thinks, the business failed, therefore I failed. I was then seeing myself as a failure. And I had to go through a lot of healing and growing to realize that the business failed. Businesses fail all the time. People get so caught up in seeing all of the successful businessmen and women, entrepreneurs. And if you really dive into their stories, they had a lot of failed businesses before they had successful ones.
Look at
But
Elon Musk.
but we always see the wins. And so the fear of failure is what stops people from doing what they really want to do because they're so worried about how other people will see them and not doing it the right way. You see, I tell you, you should have do XYZ. Right? That's what we hold ourselves back from. We don't want to be labeled as failures.
Just a minute. I think Joyanne was trying to say something a little bit earlier.
well, I think I'll be going back a little bit, but I was just talking. I was going to mention multiple intelligences or varying intelligences, and people not understanding that we think that academia is the only thing that you can do or the only way you can be intelligent. But from teaching and being the school, I teach at one of the newer secondary schools. We do a lot of skills, and I see those children. They are brilliant. They're brilliant with their hands, and I'm like, these children are so smart, and society won't view them as smart because that's not what we think about when we think about people being smart. I pass by St. Thomas Parish Church, and I see this guy. He does a lot of he does craft with stone, and it's beautiful. And today teacher was telling me that he went to one of the newer secondary schools and he taught him, and I'm like, it's amazing what these people can do. But I do believe that our society is getting away from that slowly but surely. I do believe that we are starting to understand that academia is not the only, or somebody who is academic is not the only person who is intelligent. Schools are now we now have coding and robotics. And it was amazing. You were talking about job fairs. Job fairs are so diverse now. One time you would only have certain jobs, but now even gaming and stuff like that was in the job fair that we had the last time. And the students enjoyed it. So I think that we're slow, we're behind, but we're getting there.
That's excellent news. And I just want to, in terms of talking even about on a global perspective, Diego and I lived in New Zealand, and I don't know what Diego's experience is, but I find that New Zealand is not as fixated on things like doctor, lawyer, engineer as our societies are, and I see it as reflected in their curriculum at school. And maybe again it has to do with things like advancement and enrollment in university is not seen, I think, as this a really huge deal. You're not judged as successful because you've gone to university in New Zealand. Diego, what do you think?
Yeah,
Or do
sure.
you have
One of the first observations I had, I guess, yeah, going halfway around the world, you're not really, at least I wasn't expecting much. It is still a Western culture, but one thing that struck me is were a lot of small businesses. Many people, if you check out there, you just walk down the city, you see their homes. You have a plumber, he has his own fan, call this, etc. So that's one thing that. But maybe that was the city we lived in. I didn't go to Auckland or to the bigger cities on how that was. So that's maybe another regional perspective.
true.
But that's one thing I did notice. And the other thing was, with the Maori culture and kind of including that culture, trying to enhance it, trying to share that with the world as well. Granted, New Zealand is one of the biggest dairy producers. Of course, you have corporate level companies as well, and that's required if you want to operate on a nation level in the world economy. You need some kind of export product or something to make that work. But I did notice that many are encouraged to start their own thing, and you'll have the same issues that you have everywhere, with the politics and everything. But having that choice, the option of choice to be able to decide what you want to do, is something that is kind of missing here more in the Caribbean. I think we do things more out of necessity. We did an analysis, me and a colleague of mine, on if we had to break down society, the society as it is now, amidst the pandemic, amidst the economic crisis that's going on locally and in the world. And locally, we're feeling it kind of double because you have the U.S. inflation and you have the local inflation and you have the implosion of imports and exports. That many people are kind of heading more towards the survival phase. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like it's just survival, and if you don't have that mental freedom to think of what your options are, you can't really expand. So there's kind of two extremes. You either survive, or there's going to be one individual who kind of sees an issue and sees an opportunity, but that's one in many, one in 10,000 maybe. So that they're going to reap the benefits of that crisis. But that's just pure out of necessity. Uh, but if we have a more an ecosystem where people are kind of not pressured so much and have more liberty to try things and are kind of encouraged to innovate, to express themselves to creative outlets, that will give other avenues of creating, for themselves economic sustainability. But it could also grow into culture. If I'm listening to Omar on the anime con, I immediately Googled it and looked it up because in the Caribbean you don't see much of that. But don't underestimate how big the anime world is, how big the pop culture and comic world is. If one single comic in Japan can outsell the whole U.S. market, DC and Marvel combined, if we embrace that and kind of give people the liberty to pursue that. Of course, it is a long road of trying, failing, as Denise said. But just having that option to try it can change a lot.
All right. Well, thank you so
And
much.
yes, Omar, I'm a big anime and gaming fan. So
Yeah, actually, I thought about when I when I invited Omar to participate, I thought to myself, I think that Omar and Diego should probably connect. Okay,
For sure.
so what were some of the challenges that you guys experienced when you were pivoting? I know that we talked about some of the external things that you had to deal with. So persons looking down on you. But what are some of the other things, Makeda? Sorry, I called on you just as you drank your water.
Oh, I've got something to say about this. I think there are a number of challenges that I face, but I think I'll start here. The first thing that I faced was a lack of clarity of exactly what it is that I wanted to do. I like to use the term floating through life. If anyone is watching this live or on the replay and they ever have the experience, I feel as if they're floating through life, or that life is happening to them as opposed to them taking control of life. Please let us know in the comments. I keep going in to see what the comments are saying. So I felt as if I was floating through life for so long, and I hadn't taken a step back to really take a moment and reflect on and figure out what Makeda needed to be happy, what Makeda needed to be fulfilled. And I want to drill down on that and be really specific. I hadn't taken the time out to figure out what Makeda in her 30s at 35 needed in order to be happy and fulfilled. Because we tend sometimes to attach ourselves to a decision that we made 10 years, 20 years ago, and then feel as if we're locked or, ball and chain to this decision we made when we were 17. Oh, I'm studying marketing. And we don't take the moment to step back and figure out, okay, what is it that I actually need? Because the reality is, what you want and what you need from your career in order to feel lit up, in order to feel excited, in order to feel motivated and inspired every day, isn't necessarily going to be the same thing at 35 that it was at 25. Isn't going to necessarily be the same thing at 40 as it was at 35. So so often we get chained to this idea of, or we get chained to decisions that we made in ourselves ages ago rather, and don't allow ourselves to explore. So that was the first thing that was the first challenge really that I faced. Figure out what it is I actually want my life to look like. And notice that I said life, Roanne. I figured out what I wanted my life to look like as opposed to just my career. And this is so important for anyone who right now is, okay, first of all, if you're tuning into a podcast at 8:00 on a Friday night about career pivoting, I'm guessing that right now there's something going on in your career that you don't feel absolutely thrilled about, right? So the reason I say I'm thinking about a vision for your life is so often we think about our career in isolation. So we always focus, what's my vision for my career? What's my goal for my career? So we focus on our career first and then try to build our life around our career. It's like we're building our life with our leftover energy, with our leftover time, with our leftover mental space. And if you are having a shitty time in your career, you cannot tell me that that doesn't spill over and affect every other area of your life, from your relationships with your partner, from the energy you have to help your kid with their homework, from the energy you have to see your friends on a Friday night. It affects all of these other areas. So when I say about getting clarity on what I wanted to do, I'm talking about my vision for my life. So I'm thinking not just about my career, but what type of life do I want to live? What is most important to me? What is it that brings me joy? What are the values that I want to live and breathe every single day? What kind of impact do I want to create? What kind of legacy do I want to build? And then once I figured out that, then the question was, what type of career fits in to the life that I want to live? So that was the very first challenge I had, figuring out what's Makeda's vision. And if that speaks to anyone, please let me know in the comments. Let us know, type it in the chat if that the idea of, focusing on your career first and then trying to get your life just slot in, if that resonates with anyone, because that's an experience that I think that a lot of people can identify with. And I had loads of other challenges, but I'll pause there. One is fear, and I think we might have a little bit time to talk about fear. But I just want to very quickly say this is, if you have dedicated, let's say 10 years, 20 years, in Omar's case, he said 15 years to one career, so often we get caught up in, anyone that does economics or knows the term, we get caught up in the sunk cost. So this is what I've already put in. And that's where the fear comes in. I can use the example of, I'm not a nails person. I got my nails done for a photo shoot in February. And long story short, it was a horrible experience. The nails were jacked up. The service was horrible. They overcharged me. And I got home and I was like, this was such a bad experience. I want to take them off. And I'll never forget my mom, she's tuning in. She said, oh, but that's a waste of money. That's a waste of money. You just put them on. Hello, I don't care. I do not care. Just because you've done something and invested something doesn't mean, well, no, you're beholden to that. What about come on, economics, what about the opportunity cost? Speak on it. What about the opportunity cost? What you could gain from releasing that thing that is bringing you no joy. So instead of focusing on the sunk cost, the time, oh, well, I did finance at university. Oh, well, I spent I'm at the head of my department. The next logical step is to be the VP. If you are unfulfilled and unhappy, what is at stake? If you continue on doing something that leaves you crying on a Sunday night, that leaves you dreading going into work on a Monday, that leaves you in the bathroom stall at work with anxiety and overwhelm, and just plain old leaves you feeling broken, it's not worth it. So that was the biggest challenge, figuring out what I wanted my life to look like, releasing this idea of I built my career on this, and really tapping into the vision I have, not just for my career, but the type of life that I intend to create for myself.
Okay, well, first of all, preach, Makeda. Somebody else said that. Preach, Makeda. Gail.
Thanks, Gail. I'm coming with the word.
Sorry. Go ahead, Omar.
I resonate with everything you said, 1000%. My last job was an abusive relationship. It was like I was watching Lifetime, those movies where there's this man abusing his wife. That's how I felt. I felt like the battered wife. And I remember I had two turning points. The first one didn't stick. I was in the car park at work. I was working in town, and town, as you know, if you want to get to town at good work, get to work for a certain point in time, you have to go to town early. So I'm in City Center car park at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I could not get out of my car. My hands were shaking. do I have to deal with these miserable people? I mean, my staff were great, but the management, they really were upsetting me, and I couldn't get out. And I said to myself, this is not what life is supposed to be.
Mm.
And I could not identify with it. So I spoke to my girlfriend, fiance, soon to be wife, and she said, "We know, Omar. If you're not happy, then just leave. But you can't just pick up and leave a job. And the second thing that this is what really made me realize this crap was not for me. There was a conference that was put on, and I believe that it would have been one of the best conferences for me to go and push Anime Con and whatever have you. And a computing company had something to do with the conference. Very small thing. But my bosses said that I could not do anything with this convention because it would seem like I'm repping this company, which had their name in some small footnote on this convention. And I sat down and I thought about it, and my dismay turned to rage. And I had never been so angry. It was like one of those rages where you end up in prison when the night is done because you're just gonna go and do something really, really stupid. So I missed the opportunity. It was a
Mm.
really bad opportunity I missed, a fantastic opportunity. I'm sorry. And I said to myself, never again. I will never miss another opportunity because somebody has cold feet or somebody has some worry about some nonsense or the other. So after that, you start making your plans to pivot out. And that's what we did.
Love it.
I also want to say one of the greatest challenges that I think I have with life, period, regardless of society, is this thought process that we as human beings are monoliths. And so the conversation about what is your career, like you have to do this one thing for all the days of your life, as if we are not individuals with multiple talents, skills, experiences, desires, wants, and needs. And so that's why I did whichever degree I felt like, oh, I like this. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to study this. What are you going to do with this? Who asked you? I want to do it and I'm going to do it. Like, this is my business. Go mind your business and let me do me. And none of the degrees that I did individually made sense. Like, they don't connect. They're not dotted to each other in a meaningful way, except for now when they kind of add up and all my sum total experiences, my career experiences, or the jobs that I did over the years individually made no sense and brought me here. So again, thinking that, hey, so I like this, so I have to do this for the rest of my life, and I don't get to explore the other things that I'm interested in or the other sectors of life. Like, I'm in wine, but I could tell you I've done different things in wine. I look forward to doing other things in wine. It's a big industry. It's a global industry. I'm not going to I was an importer and distributor. I might not want to do that again. But hey, now I'm a business development executive in an education organization. I also teach qualifications. This is fun for me. Hey, I could tell you I have a part-time gig working in a retail shop because I've never worked in a retail shop. And I feel like, well, hey, let's see what that looks like. And if I want to get into real estate at some point in my life, because hey, why not haggle with housing and make some money on top? Like, what is to say that we have to do this one thing all the days of our lives? And so it made no sense to everyone around me when I made these decisions to be like, what, oh Lord, a Joe Heap mirror is what it's called, all over the place, or Punka's donkey. Let me go with Punka's donkey. Yes, let me go with that one. And so I love the Bajanisms most days of the week, promise you. And so I just did what I wanted to your point, fulfilling your heart's desires and needs. One of the questions you had, Ron, is about regrets. I don't live in a life of regret. Even if I made a decision that didn't go the way I thought or resulted in a bad experience, there's a lesson to learn. There's something that made me who I am now that I wasn't 5 years ago. That's how I also feel about choosing career paths or choosing jobs. Like, hey, If in this moment I feel like being an educator, great. And if in 5 years I feel like doing another thing in wine or somewhere else, why not? Now, granted, I say that with privilege because I don't have a family, I don't have children, I certainly don't have a mortgage. I don't want that level of responsibility. And thank you very much. I understand that there's a privilege with which I make that statement. But then if you do have responsibility, to Omar's point, you get strategic. So you can't just make decisions ad hoc and just say, hey, I'm gonna walk away from my job, which I've done many times. Like, yeah, this ain't my life. Okay, bye. Here's your resignation letter. But you can do that a bit more strategically and start to put things in place so that you can move into the space that is fulfilling you and gives you joy while also paying you some money. Because I do not exist in a world where I work from 9 till 5 or however many hours and don't feel joy. Like, I'm not doing that because I don't have life put down. I don't have it for another 50 years. I I don't know that I coming back in this iteration of my body. So whatever time I have now should be well spent and serving purpose me while serving purpose the world, whatever it was that I was intended to be and do to this earth or for this earth.
Can I say, guys, that I feel like I am amongst my people? Um, because I would say that people have looked at me and wondered, what on earth are you doing? I have lived that life. So when persons have been involved in jobs for like 10 years, 15 years, I'm like, what is that? Because, that's not how my brain works. That's not how my personality is. I like to try different things, be involved in different things. So that's why I naturally gravitate toward project work because, it's exciting for me. I get to do different things. But, I think that when I was in my early 30s, I came to a point where I felt like maybe something was wrong with me. So I spent my 20s doing the things that I really wanted to do and totally enjoying my life. And then when I hit my early 30s, I felt like society got to me. And so I started to crave this stability. And I still want stability. So I'm not advocating instability, but, stability in the form that people think stability should be in, right? Which is safe job, stay in this position forever. And so, like, my mind is, it was a real struggle for me, even mentally, because I'm also the kind of person, and Makeda touched on it, well, clarity and aligning your job with what you want your life to be. And there is, like she says, such a connection between my work and my life. Now, there are some persons that can say, I'm just going to go to work and I'm going to, put in my 8 hours, and they feel really, they don't have to like the job. They just do it. But I am just not built that way. And I think that I would say that I feel good to know that I'm normal, because there are many times that I've not felt normal. And I know that my best friend said to me recently that she feels like the world is catching up to my personality in terms of viewing my way of approaching work as acceptable, because in the past it was not seen as acceptable. I see a question here from Shane. Is it really about the pivot, or was it finding content as you move in and out of seasons? Anybody want to tackle that question?
Are they mutually exclusive?
Well,
because that's the thing. I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. I think that we have to realize that we can't plan our lives at all. We like to have this idea that we can, but we can't. Who we are today is not who we're going to be 5 years from now
or tomorrow.
Shoot, tomorrow morning. In a couple hours, I'll be a very different human being. And so the thing is, as we evolve, as we evolve as beings, as we experience more and more of life, as we have more and more exposure to the possibilities, our contentment or what is required to give us contentment will change. The difference is, are you going to sit there and not evolve with your personal evolution? So is your profession or your job not going to evolve with your evolution? Or are you going to pivot every time just to right size your life to fit your needed contentment? It's a decision. I don't think they don't have to be mutually exclusive. They really just don't. You could do two things can be true at the same time, and I think that's what it really is. How do you evolve with your personal, your human evolution?
I agree.
Can I say,
My pivots took me through my seasons. I made 2 pivots in my life. My first pivot was when they told me that I had to become a doctor, lawyer, or a bank manager, and I pivoted away from my dreams into the corporate world. And that changed from summer straight past autumn into fall. And then I pivoted back into creativity, which took me from my winter back into summer. And and I'm happiest here. And I won't say that I am not working hard. This is the hardest I've worked in my entire life. I own 4 businesses, and they're all in fledgling pioneering industries. So especially in Barbados, where we are a conservative society, and it takes a while for some of these things to uptake. It's an uphill battle most of the time. So I have no problem with the pivot in and out of the seasons and whatnot once it makes sense for me and the philosophy which I have at the time. If something happens to me tomorrow or tonight and I realize I have to pivot again, I will pivot again. Because in the end, when I'm lying down in bed at night, I don't have to worry about what other people think of me. It's my own demons, my own angels, which are keeping me running.
Yeah. Can I? That's great. Yeah. I want to speak to that because, call me crazy, you won't be the first person, but I don't just want contentment. I want to feel insane joy. I want to be excited by what I am doing every day. I want to get turned on by this shit. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I want to have a career where, you blink and it's like, oh my God, it's 3:00. I can't believe I missed lunch. Or, oh goodness, I haven't been to the bathroom in 2 hours. That's what I want to be doing. I don't just want to be content. I want to feel ridiculous, unbridled joy and satisfaction. I want to feel every day as if God is using every bit of potential that He placed in me, every skill, every talent, every bit of this personality, everything that He blessed me with. I want to do a career where it's wrung out and I feel joy. And you can call it unrealistic and you can call it big dreams, but who told you you have to dream small? And my question also would be, how's the dreaming small working out for you? The whole idea of limiting yourself and I've worked with a number of clients that have gone from 15 years in higher education to starting a coaching business. A client who's a communication specialist that always wanted to write a book. I worked with her to launch her old book. Someone who pivoted companies. So loads of people who have made this change. And when we talk about dreams, actually having a vision for themselves and a dream in terms of what they want to do, the main thing they struggle with is owning it. I can own the fact that I want a ridiculously joyous and, career that I love. But if we only allow, there's no such thing as a realistic dream. If you have a dream and it doesn't make your stomach bubble a little bit and give you those flutters in your chest, you're not dreaming big enough. But so often society tends to tell us what's realistic, what's rational. Let's keep things reasonable because you're an adult, you're married, you have kids. Allow me to dream. Let me allow myself to dream and then figure out how to get there. And I would say for anyone who is, I want to give one piece of advice here. So anyone who is thinking about pivoting and making a change to their career, the one piece of advice that, and you might be closing on this, Rowan, my apologies. I have another piece of advice by the end if this is how you wanted to close. But a quick piece of advice that I'll give, I got loads of advice that I would give now is the number one thing. If you right now are unhappy, uninspired, unfulfilled, you're looking around at your life and your career right now and saying, this is not it. The most powerful thing you can do right now in this moment is to make a decision. Is to make a decision that you are going to make a change. Because the trap we fall into is we're just going to spend time figuring out how this is going to work. Denise, Omar, Joya, Diego, I know you know this. How is this actually going to work? That is a trap that you fall into. Oh, how is this? Oh, let me wait until the right time. Let me wait until the kids are in secondary school. Let me wait until I save more. Let me wait until this. Let me wait until I get my ducks in a row. Leave the damn ducks alone. I beg. Leave the ducks alone. Because when you keep waiting to get things in order, that's when you find yourself 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years have passed and you are doing the exact same thing. So the most powerful thing you can do is to make a decision. And I liken it to this. Let's say well, this is a real imaginary situation, but let's say I wanted to run a marathon. Let's say I wanted to run a marathon. You know, one day I'm going to run a marathon. One day I'm going to run a marathon. That's just one day I'm going to run a marathon. Or maybe I train here and there. Maybe I cut my carbs or whatever runners do. There's a difference between someone saying, one day I'm going to run a marathon and someone that decides I am going to run a marathon. The 1st of January 2023, I'm going to run a marathon. Because the moment you make a decision, all of a sudden your intention starts to change. Your action starts to change. And the conversation you're having with yourself changes from how can I make this work to actually, how can I make this work? You start thinking, how can I make, I say this to my clients all the time, how can I make work the very thing that I want to make work? So now you're moving out of fear-based thinking into possibility thinking, and you're shifting your mind over to finding a solution. So the most powerful piece of advice I can give to anyone who is thinking, should I not make a decision? And then the question becomes, how can I make this work?
Can I add in that when you have your dreams and you're making a decision, keep your dreams and your decisions to yourself. Because one of the biggest problems is not how big the dream is, and if you have the capacity or capability to make the dream happen, is that oftentimes you share your dreams with the wrong people who will bring their own fears, their own limitations, their own insecurities to your table and keep you from moving into what it is that you desire to do. And I learned that the hard way. That's why I keep my business to myself. And oftentimes, by the time I have worked out all of what is the decision? What is it that I want to do? What does it look like? What are the steps? I actually get there and then announce to people, oh, so this is what I've done.
You want to do.
I agree.
I love that.
One thing I want to add to that, though, that the entrepreneurship journey is very, very lonely. As a result of that, you go through periods of self-loathing. You go through periods where you're wondering why the hell I did this to myself. Where you're bleeding in the gutter while you're doing all these things. But in the end, it's ultimately rewarding because you build your legacy.
Sounds like a PhD.
But I also want to say, just to be clear, just in case people think that we're also pushing people to believe that the pivot only exists from corporate to entrepreneurship. You can still you can pivot from one aspect of corporate into another, or from government to corporate, from corporate to government, to whatever, from where you are to where you want to be. So
like Joyanne did.
Right, correct. That it doesn't mean you always have to go into entrepreneurship. As Omar said, entrepreneurship is oftentimes a very lonely and certainly a very difficult path to follow. And everyone may not want it, or you may not feel you're built for it, whatever that means. And if being in a structured organization works for you, but you just need to find the right space and place, please do not think that we're just trying to, I have zero intent of making anyone pivot into entrepreneurship if that is not their heart's desire.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Diego. Oh, so I want to hear from Diego and then Joyanne. So Diego, you go ahead.
Yeah, so two things real quick before I forget. So replying to Denise, I disagree actually that keeping your dreams to yourself. Um, because yes, you'll get a lot of naysayers. Yes, you may get pressured down. Of course, you need to know yourself first on, can you handle that? But I found, especially at how, especially media, the interconnected world is working right now, the more you put yourself out there, the faster you find the right people, the faster you end up in the right circles and communities. And it's actually, from what I've seen, you get that empowerment and opportunities faster to reach that goal. Because I'm speaking more from my personal experience now. If you're talking about pivoting, I can chime in on that. As I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't really pivot much. It was more of a learning journey on trying different things. But just to quickly address this, yes, as Denise and Omar said, you can stay in a corporate environment if that works for you, but you need to understand why it works for you and understand the other implications on if you want stability, something to unpack. What does stability mean? Can you rely on a pension? How does that work? And that was 2017, 2018 was a moment for me on understanding this financial system. And I went into a financial literate rabbit hole on how everything works. So yeah, electrical engineering, creative industry, finance, and now back to content creation. So don't take your experiences for granted, even if it's something completely new. And what you'll find is that intersection between all those areas, once you have a true understanding, so not just memorizing, but once you have a true understanding on unpacking everything from, how that works and how to interpret that for you, I think that's where you can truly say, hey, I want to work in a corporate environment for these specific reasons to set up my retirement in this way. But while doing that process, I want to travel, etc. Because corporate has its advantages. You can go network, you can go to certain areas. You spend the next 5 years doing that. But coming back to the dream part on share it. Uh, Especially on Twitter, and it is one of the most underrated spaces right now, if we're talking about social media, uh, to finding very niche communities. You can find anything from anime to business coaches. And the great thing is Facebook is oversaturated, Instagram is oversaturated. Depending on which area you are in, people are more receptive on a platform like Twitter or a new platform in general because it's less crowded. So you want to connect with that person in that particular business sector, a coach, you just send them a tweet, you reply to their comments, etc. Great, you get that connection or do something added value for them. uh, that I had, or a few weeks ago, we had on our podcast uh, D Rock from VaynerMedia, Gary Vaynerchuk's personal videographer. The way we got into contact with him, my co-host actually went to a conference like 6, 7 years ago, met him at a conference. He was in the same mastermind group, and they never spoke again. We started our podcast, and we said, okay, we're going to reach out. And to our surprise, he said yes. He comes on. And one thing was amazing that he told us a story on how he got his job. It wasn't easy, but it was through constant sending DMs, making a compilation, making a video. For him, it was a way to add value to this person through his video skills. And just keep pushing to different avenues. And there was a very nice quote he had, like, hard work is when serendipity. Wait, I lost it. Something about serendipity. Um, but
You'll remember and you can tell us.
yeah, but what it comes down to, don't take your past experience for granted. There's gonna come a moment where people see you. The more you put yourself out there, and when the timing and conditions are right, you will get that opportunity, and you need to be ready to grab that opportunity, because there are opportunities abundant.
I
I
actually
think
want
that
to
it's
share that
okay
one
to
because
respond.
I did a similar panel discussion at a wine conference a few weeks ago. I led the conversation among some other persons who were in different spaces. And one of the quotes that I actually shared, which I botched up initially, but someone Googled it in the interim and shared it, and I did prepare it for today. And this came from Oprah, so it's very similar to what Diego is referencing. I believe luck is preparation meeting opportunity. If you hadn't been prepared when the opportunity came along, you wouldn't have been lucky. And I think that's along the same grain of, well, I perceive that that's along the same grain of where Diego was going. And you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
correct
yeah.
me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
want to
I
give
got it right.
Joyanne the opportunity. Oh, I
Uh,
thought you were finished, Diego.
Yeah, no, just to close it off, the way the rock plays it, like hard work and intent play a huge role in serendipity, and
I didn't hear
serendipity
it.
is
Can you say that again?
hard work and intent play a huge role in serendipity, and this
Mm,
plays into what Denise just said, when luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
okay. I want, yeah. Okay, cool. I'll get those quotes from you guys later. Um, Joyanne, go ahead.
Okay, I want to speak for persons who have, or two persons who have families or mortgages and think that they cannot pivot. They can, because I am a living testimony of that. I have pivoted several times and I've been a mother for almost 20 years. So it is not impossible to do. I know everyone is not like me, but I am someone who, if I want to leave, I will leave. And because I'm not afraid to work at a gas station and I'm not afraid to work at the supermarket. So if that's what I have to do until I get another job or the job that I want to do, then I'm okay with that. And I think sometimes people hold on because their job might carry prestige and they don't want to leave it because it looks bad. I am not that kind of person. I will work in a call center, because I have to get my bills paid. So I just want to encourage anybody who is out there who has a family. Let me tell you something. When I left banking, I left it for a job teaching for one term. I did not know if they would renew my contract, and I did not care. I wanted to go. Was I afraid? Yes. But I have a sister that always says, do it afraid. I was afraid, but I knew I knew within myself that if it didn't work out, I would have been okay. No, I'm not telling everybody to do that because my mother always tells us that everybody's not like us. So I'm not telling anybody just leave, But at that time, I already had a mortgage, I had two children at the time, and I still decided to go. I've never worked in an environment or a space more than this is the longest job I've ever had, 6 years. And there are so many times that I wanted to leave because I've never done anything for an extended period of time. What I did, and Denise mentioned it, I owned my space. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. When I was in the bank, I excelled. So it wasn't a difficult job for me. My boss, he increased my targets and I burst them as well. I remember him not wanting to give me what we call exceed expectation, even though I would have passed every single thing. He said, and me exceeded. He said I wasn't working hard enough. Even though I exceeded, he knew that I could do better. And I was just, so he didn't want to give it to me, right? I left there. I was like, I'm not happy here. This is not my space. This is not where I belong. And I went to teach. When I started to teach, I didn't feel like I belonged either. I really, really struggled with going into this is not career pivot, like what I've done in the hotel industry to in one private sector to another private sector. This is teaching something completely different, and I own that space as well. So I remember I did my master's in management. I'm doing it in management with specialty in marketing because I felt like I needed to have a fallback just in case I left teaching to have something to fall back on. But you know what I've done? In teaching, I decided to start a page. I've turned that page into a little small business. And within the school, I do projects because I have to make it my own. I have to do things that, make it seem like it's mine. So right now we're starting a club at school, a social media marketing club, where students at our school, entrepreneurs, get to market their products online. I don't want to give out too much information. I don't want a school to steal my idea, but we have lots of things in my business wise. I have sent a proposal for us to give personal professional training to our students because we have a school to work program. So I am taking what I know from corporate and making that space my own. And that is something that you can do. And just a reminder before I shut up, don't be afraid. Don't limit yourself because you have children. Don't limit yourself because you have a mortgage. Be smart. I'm not saying to do what I do, and just jump the gun and go wherever you feel like going. Some people may not have the tenacity to do it, but I do. But do it. Plan, do it. That's it.
I
would
love
say,
that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just like, first of all, love that, Joyanne. And if I have a moment, I wanted to touch on some of what she shared because what she was really speaking to is pretty much the number one thing that stops anyone from pivoting their career when they know in their heart they're being called to do something else. And that is the fear, which I know was one of the questions you said to us, which is about fear and what were you scared of. But if I think about fear, if I put myself back to that situation back in 2018, it was the fear of making a mistake, the fear of making the wrong move, fear of jumping out into the frying pan and into the fire, fear of judgment. What are people going to say? Fear of rejection, fear of success. What if I actually go after what I want and it works out? Do I feel deserving of it? There are all of these different fears that we experience. And fear, if you do not know how to handle it, can keep you stuck in a place, in a situation that doesn't serve you. So I always say, don't let fear become your fortress. Let it become your fuel. Let fear become your fuel. Because, and this is what I loved about what Joyanne said. She said that when she made the change, she said whether she needs to work in a gas station, like whatever, she knew that she could handle it. And that is at the crux. When we feel scared of something, when we're experiencing fear, it really boils down to this feeling that we can't handle it, that we can't handle making the wrong decision, that we can't handle putting ourselves out there and trying to get this job and then it doesn't work out and people talking about us, that we can't handle things. It's a fear that we can't handle something. So I always wonder what would happen if you trusted yourself and you believed in what you were actually capable of. So it really is about believing in what you can handle and what you're capable of. And there are two things I say about fear. And the first one is that your vision or your big why, it needs to trump fear. It needs to trump fear. You need something that can yank you out of your fear. So not the pain of your current job or your current situation, but you need something super compelling and super inspiring that motivates you and propels you to take action. You need something so big that it is bigger than any fear that you could experience. And when people say so big, it's just like, oh, I want to make more money. I'm just like, that's not your why. Your why isn't that you want to make more money. My question always is make more money. So what would that allow you to do? What would making more money allow you to do? Would that maybe allow you to travel more, see the world, or maybe it would allow you to, spend more time with your family or create generational wealth? That's your big why, not just to make more money. So you need a big why that is so much bigger than fear. And the final thing about fear is And I could talk about fear for hours, I have in the past, but I'll share this. The antidote, the cure, the magical elixir to fear is taking action. The
I
cure
agree.
for fear is taking action. People reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn in particular. And how were you able to do this? How were you able to start your own business coming from this small country? How were you able to now work with all of these companies? It isn't that I am fearless. And I'm sure Denise, Diego, Joyanne, and Omar would not say that they're failures. If they do, they are lying. It isn't the absence of fear. It is the ability to trust yourself to take action even in the face of fear. So that's the difference between someone that is doing a career that they absolutely love, that fills them with joy and passion and purpose, and someone else who is in a job that they find unfulfilling and are saying they want to leave but don't actually leave. Hello, that was my story. Is the
Um,
willingness to take action even in the face of fear. So that's the cure
If
for
I,
fear. Action.
if
And
I
it doesn't
can
have to
just
be big
say
action.
something.
It can be
Oh,
small
sorry. Go
action.
ahead.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't
No, I
have to
was
be
just
big
going.
action. It can be
Sorry.
small action as well. And the reason I'm saying that is people
Mm.
think, well, that means I need to hand in my notice. I need to resign. And then that feels too big. No. That's a big
Small
step.
steps.
Break that bad boy down. What's the
Mhm.
first thing that you would do if you believed in yourself and you believe that the type of life and career that you are craving, if you believe that was possible for you and you believe that you could handle the transition, what is the first step you would take? Start there. It could be update your LinkedIn profile. It could be even a step before that. It could be look at someone else's LinkedIn profile that you like and be like, oh, that looks pretty good. It could be reach out to a career coach. It could be to talk to your husband about it. It could be a small step, because these small steps are what build on top of each other and get you towards the goal. And if you don't believe that you can do a big pivot, believe in yourself enough that you can take the first step,
I
because
agree
that's all it
completely.
takes. Yeah.
And what I would like to add to that is I tell persons all the time, your life is your movie, and make sure you're in the leading role and not an extra. I often tell people, when you are living your life, you have to make sure, as Makeda says, don't succumb to fear. You know, you have no, there's only one bad day you have, and that's the day that you don't make it. Every decision you've made in your life has gotten you to this point, and you're here for a purpose. And every crisis in your life where you thought you were not going to make it, you have made it. And no matter
Yeah.
what you go through, there's only one time you're not going to make it. You're going to make it all the other times. So keep on fighting. You're going to have days which are better than others. You're going to have some that seem worse than others at that point in time. But 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, tomorrow you might realize that that hardship that you went through prepared you for the challenge that you have today or tomorrow. And that's the big bad guy you have to fight in your movie before the closing sequence. So make sure you conquer that fear, you do you, because as I said before, when you're laying in bed at night, you have to make sure that you are comfortable and confident laying down and not saying, I should have done this because John said I should have done this, because John's in his bed sleeping at night when you're up with your
It's
demons on your
true.
shoulder trying to tell you this, that, and the third. Do you?
I wanted to share. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that for me, honestly, and again, I think it's conditioning. Yeah, my mattress do it afraid. So even when I'm afraid of something, one of my first instincts is to just act, because I don't ever want fear to stop me. So I'm like, fear? You're trying to come and confuse me today? No. Mm-mm. And I just do it, right? But then there are times, interestingly enough, where, because I'm a pretty bold person, and so sometimes there's things that I do that I think that I should probably be a little bit more fearful about. And so there's this thought process of, you're not afraid to do this, but other people don't think that this is possible, or persons think that you are, possibly doing too much? Is it possible that, you are not thinking of every single scenario? And, sometimes that puts me into a place of fear, because I feel like, okay, I'm not afraid of doing this, right? But then, and I think it comes down to the people around you, um, and not sometimes that they try to discourage you, because some will, but if you got a good circle, people not trying to discourage you. I think a lot of times people don't understand. People don't understand who you are. And it's so interesting. Joanne, I calling you out. Joanne is my sister. And we have really we're so much alike. But we also have like different personalities. And so there are things that I would go to John, I would think, oh my God, this is such a great idea. And John was like, I'm not seeing it. I support you, like if you want to do it, but I'm not seeing it. And the thing is, and then I probably have to, call
But I
somebody
think
else.
that's good.
Well,
I think that's
well,
good.
to challenge your thinking. Well,
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes I just want people to be as excited as me, and so then I go and call somebody who is as excited as me. But I call somebody that that sees the vision. But yeah, it's really important, because you can get carried away, to have that balance, but also to not allow yourself to take on other people's fear, right? So if you feel like you can do this, don't allow other person's limitations, um or their points of view, because they're not you. They're not meant to do what you're supposed to do. They don't have the vision because it's not their vision. And so that's something that's really important to know.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have that conversation with my mentees all the time. And this is why I recommend oftentimes that people don't share their dreams. Not saying that you don't find the right people to discuss varying aspects of what is necessary to make your dreams a reality. But oftentimes, and was said before, people can impose their own insecurities, their own limitations, their lack of vision for something that was not given to them. Your dreams are given to you, they're planted in you for a reason, right? And to another point, and I thought it was such a great seg into something that I prepared, because I'm a very strategic thinker and an overthinker simultaneously. And so I literally jotted down points that I give to people who are thinking about pivoting, so that you're not feeling as though you're just jumping into a wilderness. I think sometimes we have to take ourselves through a strategic thinking or strategic planning process to make sure that we're doing what all is necessary to create the vision, or to make into reality the dreams and the visions that we have. And so there are a few things that I just wanted to share quickly. First of all, before, when you define what it is that you want to do or you believe you are meant to do, figure out what is required to get there, to be that.
So
Like,
true.
what's the job description for that? What are the skill sets, the qualifications? What is required to be that person or be that thing, or to make that thing happen? And then assess yourself. Where am I? What do I have? What do I bring to the table? What makes me uniquely positioned to be that person? Or what do I have within that set of skills and qualifications thus far? What are the gaps between who I am right now and where I want to be, or what it is that I want to do? And what are the ways that I can fill in those gaps, whether it's taking a courses. I always encourage people, mentorship. Find someone, if possible, who's doing what it is that you want to do, whether it's locally, it's internationally, and ask them, in my mind, this is what this job or this business looks like. Tell me from your perspective what the realities are. Is there a disconnect between my vision and the reality? And where possible, see if that person can give you some insights as to how best to take yourself from where you are to where you need to be. Then the other thing I recommend to people, because no, everyone wants everything for free, and this society of instant gratification is unnerving at best. Sometimes you have to make some sacrifices. Sometimes you have to do an internship, an externship. Sometimes you have to go work for free in a position, in a job, in a space to build those skills, to get the knowledge or the training, or maybe go work part time in that space if it's a different field or a different industry from what you're currently in, just to see, hey, is this really what I want? Like, stress test yourself and prepare yourself for what it is that you want to do. And then, because you're making all these steps to build yourself and build the capacity for what it is that you want, that's where you start to really overcome the fear, because you're literally, to Makeda's point, you're putting small steps into action. You're doing the little bits that take you from this space to this space. But you're doing the work actively, you're taking it in smaller chunks, and you're preparing yourself for the reality, for the business, for the job, for the new career that you want. So pivoting is not this, fascination. Oh my God, it's such a dream. It is a reality that can come into place. But if you're strategic about it and you do what is necessary to put the things in place, even if it's a business and you don't have enough money from your income, you have all these hours after work or during the weekend, go make some extra hours or extra dollars to invest in building your business for yourself. Do what you have to do. I believe in joy. I would go pump gas too, but in the US, they don't have people pump, like, you pump your own gas. So, I
In
mean, I
in
can do that.
Jersey, in
Right.
Jersey.
I would have to go over to Jersey. I promise you, for all the degrees that I have no problem doing what is necessary so that I can live the life that fulfills me beyond contentment, because contentment seems to be slightly contentious word. Overwhelming and abundant joy and happiness. I will do whatever is required to be happy. And I think once you get to that point of saying to yourself, I will do what it takes to have this, and then you put a strategic plan in place and you have the right people around you supporting you, mentoring you, and helping you to realize the vision, it is doable. It might not happen in a month, it might take a couple years or a little longer, but just work toward it.
I just want to say that Shane did come back and say that he agrees that contentment is not complacency, and he does see contentment as actually a place of joy. Enjoying what you do. So, yeah,
So
and so I did want you guys to share some of your advice.
I
So
I
does
have
anybody else?
actually, yeah, I have, since we're talking about fear and the last half hour, I think fear has been the topic word. Um, to build on what Makita said, overcoming that fear, and some people don't have the confidence, or like some people aren't like Rowan, going head first, taking on that challenge. To get a bit more practical, strategic, one framework I came across over the years is people are very familiar with goal setting. Set up radical goals, set up big goals, and work towards it. But there's another exercise that you could do that goes parallel to that. And there's a great TED talk about it by Tim Ferriss. You could Google it later, Tim Ferriss, called fear setting. And this is a exercise actually that kind of helps to mentally put you in that space to prepare yourself to overcome that fear. So, like goal
Could
setting,
you
you
type
list
that in the chat, please, when you're done?
sure, fear setting, basic fear, and like goal
Oh,
setting, fear set.
setting. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, for
you set
setting.
up your fears. So, like goal setting, you put down your amazing goals, you put down your timeline, you break it down to the small step how you're going to achieve that. But parallel to that, also do the exercise fear setting. What are your greatest fears? And emulate yourself into that position of, if this were to happen, what would, how would I react? How would I feel in that situation? If I were to, leave my job now, what's the worst that could happen? I won't have income for 6 months. What's the worst that could happen? Okay, maybe my parents are still there. My sister can help me. That mentally puts constructs into place to help you deal with that fear. So you don't have to head first and take it on. And then you slowly build on that, write all the fears down, like from the worst situation to the small things, like, oh, maybe they don't like me. You get a rejection. You apply for a new job. What if you get a rejection? There's 10 others. See how you could fill it in. Maybe you need to work. Can you hire an intern for, if you're running a business, can you hire an intern to take over that so you have more things to do to expand your business, because you're afraid if you let it go, if that intern screws up, what happens? Do you lose $1,000 a month, or you lose $10,000 a month? Write that out. So then you have like two exercises: your goals and your fears, and then you can weigh that in, and maybe that helps you to overcome that even easier. Because I love my quotes, and another one is basically one that I have come to love more recently is, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. So
That is so true. I'm going to do like
imagine yourself in that position. You've already, felt it. So when it happens, it's like, okay, moving on to the next thing. You've learned from it. What's the next goal? And you're building up on that. So that's all I wanted to add to this conversation on fear, and framework that could maybe help you if you're not, that confident in yourself. Just write it
Thank
out.
you. That's excellent information. That's great information. I'll chat that out. Anybody else wanted to add anything? Any advice?
I just want to say, and it's along the lines of fear too, but a different kind of fear. I'm not necessarily fearful to go and do things, but I'm fearful of people knowing what I'm doing. I tend to hide things a lot because people might think, who is she? What does she think that she can do that? Even coming on this show, I was extremely fearful. I was like, wow, look at the panel. Who am I? Why am I going to be here? What will I have to contribute? And even she was telling me, about my small business, and she was saying you should mention it. I was like, no, because people gonna want to know, like, what's she doing with that business, or but I'm glad I came. So it's advice for people who are like me and fearful. I am so happy to be amongst people who are so proud, and unapologetic about who they are and where they're going, and their success, and not be afraid of it. And so my advice to people is to don't hide, because no one will know what you're doing. If you are selling donuts and no one knows you're selling donuts, no one can buy them from you. So when you are pivoting, even if it is not giving up your job but doing something on the side, you can't be afraid to let people know what you're doing. You can't be afraid that if people know and you fail, they'll talk about you, like Denise said. You can't be afraid of those things. You have to do what you're doing. You have to be confident in what you're doing. And if you fall, you're going to be all right. Don't let society put limits on you, limits on what you can be, limits on where you can go or what you can accomplish. Stay focused, be responsible about it, and go for it. Fulfill your dreams. That's it.
Agreed. And I'd like to add to that. And in terms of people speaking about you, in the end, it doesn't matter. Whether you do well, they'll speak about you. If you fail, they'll speak about you. If you do nothing, that's when they won't speak about you, because you're not doing anything. If you're gonna make waves, people will speak about you. And in the end, who cares, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makeda?
I'm getting there, Omar. I'm getting there.
Who cares? Who cares? I was going to say, well, before I want to give some practical advice, but when we think about all of these fears, whether it's people talking about you or rejection or embarrassment or making the wrong move, for me, the biggest fear is getting to 96, 97, let's just say 100, and looking back on my life and saying, what if? What if I believed in myself? What if I trusted myself? What if I was courageous enough to actually do what I wanted to do? For me, that's the biggest fear. And I feel that even more so coming out of this Panasonic that we've been in, when it's like life is not a joke. It sounds trivial, but we literally only get one shot at this. Like, do you realize that we're not getting this day back? We're not getting this moment back. We literally only get one shot at life. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to wring all of the juice out of it, because the thought of being filled with regrets and what ifs, for me, that is the definition of haunting. So when I think about the fear of making a mistake, I'm just like, okay, what's the bigger fear really is that I don't live up to my God-given potential. So that's one thing I wanted to say about fear, but I wanted to give some practical advice, particularly for people who know that what they're doing right now isn't what they're meant to be doing. But they're God, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They know they want to pivot, but to what? To where? What am I actually pivoting to? So the practical advice that I would give is this. First of all, like anyone, I always say, as I said before, start with your vision. Start with your vision for your life and the type of life that you want to live. Figure out how your career works into that. And then the second thing that I would say is, and it speaks to the fear and the belief in yourself, is work on your mindset. Work on the stories that you tell yourself about what's possible for you, what you're capable of, and what you deserve. Because those stories that you are repeating subconsciously time and time again, they affect your expectations and they affect the actions that you are willing to take. There's no point jumping from your vision to being like, okay, now I'm going to be, I don't know, a YouTuber or a content creator or something. I'm going to leave my job in banking. I'm going to start teaching. If deep down, secretly, in your heart of hearts, you're thinking you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you don't have what it takes, or you're not likable. And I'm saying this from experience, because when I made that transition, those are the thoughts that were running through my mind. So do the work to understand the stories you're telling yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve, and understand how to shift those stories so you're operating from a place of confidence, courage, and power. And the other thing I would say is, and this one piece is specifically for people that don't know what they want to do. You hear it all the time. And for me, I think it's in part yes, which is looking at your strengths. And looking at your strengths, that's great. But if you are in a career that you find unfulfilling, chances are the solution isn't going to be on the strengths that you've utilized, in the last 10, 15 years in that career. So instead of just looking at your strengths, I always advise people to take a step back and think about what are your favorite skills to use. So not just what you are good at, but what are your actual favorite skills to use? Because God knows, I am so good at organizing, project management, and that's how I built up my successful career. But dear God, I don't want to use those skills on a day-to-day basis anymore. It was causing me stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. So it's not enough to be like, oh, this is what I'm good at, but do you enjoy it? So if you're unsure what area you want to move in, instead of just looking at your strengths and what you've done before, think about your actual favorite skills to use. What skills do you use that really light you up? And then linked to that is, if you have no idea what sector, what industry you want to go into, really think about what areas do you enjoy. If you were trapped in an elevator in a lift with someone for 3 hours, like what topics would you talk about? If you're reading a book, if you're searching on YouTube for something, on a Friday night, drinking a glass of Merlot and you want to really relax and have a good time, What are you Googling? Are you Googling stuff about self-development? Are you Googling stuff about coaching, about marketing? Really take a step back to figure out what it is that you're actually interested in. Because there is, listen, don't be doing a career pivot and then just going to something that you're just like, oh, well, this seems okay. If you're going to do the work of making a transformation to yourself and your career, I would advise to figure out what it is that you actually enjoy doing, both in terms of the skills that you're utilizing as well as the areas that you're interested in. And when you start looking at that overlap, I guarantee you that it's gonna pull up for you such a range of different topics and jobs and industries and areas that possibly you've never even considered before. So I always say, like, the curiosity, the openness, the exploration, the willingness to, as you know, Denise was talking about, try something. Oh, talk to someone. Oh, wait, you're doing this at Netflix. What's that like? Have those conversations. The curiosity in figuring out what it is that you would actually like to use, that will serve you in good stead. And that's personally how I ended up doing this job, because I did not know that this is what I wanted to do beforehand. So it's that curiosity. So those are some of my practical tips.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, guys. I think it's about time that we wrap up. We're going to almost 2 hours, but it was 2 hours of really good conversation. I feel like we could talk about more. Like this was so good. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to make one final comment, and then also let persons know where they can find you if they want to get in contact with you. So I'll start with you, Denise.
Google. I honestly, I don't remember things like this. On LinkedIn, I'm Denise M. Bourne. On Facebook, I'm Denise M. Bourne. On Instagram, I'm Denise Bourne. Not spelling, but you can Google Denise Bourne and wine, and I promise you'll find me. Easily found. And ever so often in Barbados, never been to Suriname, but it can happen. Hey.
I'll be right here, ready to welcome you and bring you around.
Makeda?
Oh, you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn at Makeda Aline. That's where I'm most active. I'm also on Facebook. And you asked about one word to close with, and I would simply say this. It's a quote that I try to remember every day, and that is, God doesn't want the potential he placed in you to go to waste, and you shouldn't either.
Mm-hmm. All right. Diego?
So, yeah, Denise said Google, and I guess that's one final piece of advice I could give is make yourself findable in this digital age. Make sure people, if they just search you, they search Barbados and your first name, you should come up in that list. But where people can find me, everywhere at Diego Amirali. You can see the tag here. I'm mostly active on Twitter right now. So Twitter and Discord, very uncommon places, but there's reasons for that. And one word, I guess, don't be afraid to explore. Explore, just explore. Doesn't matter what, explore.
Yes, Mr. Creative Explorer. Omar?
Yeah. My personal philosophy is we're created to create. And I think, as was said earlier, God didn't put us here to be lackluster or to be the extra in somebody else's movie. We are our own movie. Go forward like it's your own, because it is your own. And one thing I always tell persons is, if I fell down right now and I died, my last thoughts were, I had a good run. And I don't think you should be laying down on your deathbed thinking, I should have done this or I should have done that. You have one life, make it happen. I'm not as active on social media anymore. Everyone seems to have my phone number somehow. I am always on WhatsApp. But if you do want me, Omar Kennedy on Facebook, that's the best place to find me. And I'm not as extroverted as I once was in my youth. WhatsApp me. I beg you, do not call my number. I still shell shock from being at the bank and having 10,000 phone calls a day and everything being a crisis. So if you call, I would immediately get like PTSD and start to get anxiety. So WhatsApp me, and I'll be very happy to give you a shout. Don't call.
Perfect. Don't call.
So everybody's gonna call after this.
Joyanne?
Okay, my philosophy is slow and steady wins the race. You don't. It's never too late. Don't think that your time has passed. Once you're living on this earth, you can do and achieve. You can find me on Instagram at Joy's World of English, where we discuss anything English. I give tips. We have Word Wednesdays when you got to figure out what the word is. I mean, there's so much fun things to do. And if you are a lover of the English language like I am, you can visit my page and find me.
All right. And I think my final comments, I get to have more than one because,
You're the
it's my
boss.
podcast. You know, there are advantages to these things. I would say, my philosophy, do it afraid. Do not by any means. Like if you tell me you have family commitments, if you tell me, don't let it be fear. Don't let fear be the thing that stops you from doing what you have to do. I want to acknowledge, and it was brought up here as well by Denise. Everybody, and I think Omar as well. Everybody doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. We're not. That's not what we're selling here. Everybody doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. Some people might want to move from one corporate environment to another. Some persons may want to move from the corporate sector into the public sector. Some people might want to go into academia. There's so many different options. And then there's people with different limitations. Again, things like family commitments, illness, and so those are things that we recognize. So I don't want to go away from this, having this whole session where we're telling people, do this, do that, and not recognizing that there are limitations. So we know that there are limitations, and all we ask you to do is to do the best with what you have. That's, and once you know that you've done your best, that's the most important thing. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that you enjoy this session as much as I did. A round of applause to my amazing guests. Thank you so much for coming out, for giving me the time, for giving the audience the time. And I look forward to having you guys on the show at some time in the future. So my audience, thank you so much for staying on with me as well. I hope you learned a lot. You know where to reach me. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Roanne Smith. You can also reach me on Facebook at Roanne Smith, or through my business, SS School of Business. And yeah, that's it. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Have a great night.
See you later.
Bye.